Good afternoon, everybody. It has been a really exciting day today because today has been the first day that we are distributing the Arizona for Abortion Access Initiatives. So all morning long, I have been in Tucson signing out initiative petitions to various folks who have come in the door. And this last week, I trained 390 people on how to carry these petitions and fill them out. Were any of you at those trainings? Oh, a few of you, see? I thought there were some familiar faces in the room. I'm going to start by talking about Arizona List a little bit, then I'm going to talk about the initiative, and then I'll open it up for questions. So, and I'll start with a little bit about me. So I grew up in Arizona. I grew up in Tucson. When I was 12 years old, my father ran for state legislature. I knew nothing about politics. He knew nothing about politics. We gloriously lost, and I mean gloriously. We did everything wrong. And so when I was 18, the seat opened up again, and he decided to run again. And that time, I said, I will be your campaign manager, because I was 18 years old, and I knew everything. And we lost by 203 votes. And it was so exhausting. And so I think I slept for 3 days after the election. Everybody was heartbroken, but 4 years later, he picked up and said, okay, going to do it again. And by this time, we have something I call implied incumbency. If you run enough in this state, people think that you are the legislator. And this time, we won, and he got into the state legislature and served in the state legislature in the House from 1992 until 2000. And then we ran a really vicious campaign because we were a swing district. So we were a district that was 50-50 exactly. And he was a very progressive public health doctor who worked in rural health in Arizona and not ashamed to talk about his values. But we won anyway because people like doctors. I'll just tell you, people trust doctors. And they knew that what he said came out of his compassion for human beings. So we won that contested Senate seat. So that was the year that we had a 50-50 Senate. Now that may be a long time ago for some of you who weren't here in 2000, but it was an amazing year once we had a 50-50 Senate. We had a Republican governor, but we were able to pass legislation that year like we had never been able to pass legislation. We eliminated the death penalty for juveniles. We changed the blood alcohol level for drunk driving, because you could be completely drunk and still drive and not be arrested in the state of Arizona before then. There were a number of different things that got passed because all we needed was 50-50. And I say that because we are looking right now at a legislature that is one seat off in the House and one seat off in the Senate. We don't have to do a lot this election cycle. We just have to get parity. If we just get one seat in the Senate or one seat in the House, Katie could get legislation through that would make a real difference. But back to my story. So I was running the full slate of campaigns. We had 2 House candidates, and my father was a Senate candidate. And in April 2001, he was in the legislature. He had had a busy day running around, and he dropped dead of a heart attack in the legislature. And part of that was particularly ironic because he had had a bill defeated the previous week about putting defibrillators in the legislature. And they said it was an unnecessary expense. So after he died, they pulled it back up again and they passed it. And it has saved 3 legislators since then. So, you never know how things are going to work. But at any rate, I had a long conversation with my mother. We decided that we did not want, at that time we were grieving, we didn't want to take the seat. And so my friend from high school, who was in the House, said that she would run for the Senate seat, and that was Gabby Giffords. So I was her bridesmaid, she was my bridesmaid, so we got through, and I ran her first congressional race. And then I'm going to tell you that after she was shot, I took a step back and said, I don't think I ever want to do federal politics again. I don't ever want to be in that situation because it was truly devastating. But what I do want is still to help women get elected to politics. So I moved over to Arizona List. So I haven't been at Arizona List for 20 years, but I've been in politics for more than 20 years. But I moved over to Arizona List, And I started working with just a few legislative candidates. And just because I knew it, right? We had it in the house. I started all of my teenage years stuffing envelopes and knocking on doors, and I have my dog teeth scars on my chest, but thank God I had a clipboard and they weren't on my neck, right? So I know what it's like to go knocking on doors. And I know what cost it takes to the family. And one of the things that we talk about with women candidates, so the rule of thumb, and this is why Arizona List exists, is that, I'm going to say something very gendered here, so apologies guys, men will wake up and say, I should run for office. And women will wake up and say, well, there are so many other good people, and I have to take care of my kid and my mother, and I don't know if I have time, and maybe I'm not as qualified as that other person running. And women have to be asked 7 times before they will actually run for office. Wow. And so what you have is you have to really give some support, because honestly, for a lot, particularly women my age, where we're balancing teenagers and elderly parents and trying to figure this out, it is really hard and work to make the time to run for public office. So Arizona List is a full service provider. We are not the DLCC. The DLCC is an incredibly important institution that helps Democrats get elected to the legislature in Arizona. But what they do is they say, how much money did you raise? How many doors did you knock? How many calls did you make? Great, next week. How much money did you raise? How many? We don't do that. I call and I say, how's the campaign going? Not so well. What happened? Well, I can't canvass. Why can't you canvass? I got hit by a car. This is a real conversation with a candidate this morning. You got hit by a car. I was canvassing. A car turned left, didn't see me. We are a month out from the election from this woman here, Elaine Santa Cruz, and she was hit by a car canvassing. So, okay, how are we going to cope? Let's think about extra volunteers that can come out. Let's get you on the dialer on the phone so that while you're off your feet, we can have you making phone calls. Let's figure out how to get you a few more donations, so that we can hire some paid canvassers maybe to go on the doors. So this is the kind of stuff we do. We do the triage with candidates that have real life situations and don't want to make it public, don't want to have the opponent know that she just got hit by a car, because she might see that as a reason to start getting active. But we have those conversations with candidates and we move things forward. So when Arizona List started in 2004, we had 4 women we worked with. When I started in 2010, the reason they brought me on is that they'd gotten up to 25 women and they were feeling like they really needed an additional person to help out. This last cycle, we worked with 115 candidates. And that's a lot of women, yes. Our own Sandra Clark here in Green Valley, who was running for the legislature, 4 of the 5 supervisors in Coconino County were all Arizona List candidates. And so we are really a statewide organization, but we're also a multi-level organization. So very few organizations in this state, with the exception of the party, actually know all of your folks. So I can pick up the phone and talk to Darlene, who is the constable in Maricopa County for the Phoenix area, and then a few minutes later I can talk to Chris Mays, who's the Attorney General. Primarily, we do a lot of work with school board candidates because there's not a lot of support for school board candidates and their financing is different. So if they go to a training for a legislative candidate, the financing is completely different than finance for school boards because every school district has its own rules and it's a different size. So we actually one year realized that we couldn't compare our TUSD candidates, which is the 2nd largest school district in the country, in the state of Arizona, Mesa is first, to our candidates that were running for Sahuarita School District, because it's not the same. So we actually hired someone who just works on school boards, and that's all she does, is she shepherds those 30-odd school board candidates that we work with. I tend to work with the swing districts because that was my experience with my father, those districts that are the ones where we're going to pick up that 1 extra seat, LD2. If some of you know your maps, and the new numbers are very confusing, but basically the Paradise Valley, Scottsdale area, that is where we're going to pick up our Senate seat. Judy Schwiebert, who has been a solid, wonderful representative in the House. First time I sat with her, I said, Judy, how many folks do you have in your phone? And she said, I don't know, about 1,000. I said, you are going to be a great candidate. She ran community theater for the last 20 years, and she was the school librarian. And the combination of the two means she met every kid at every school year, and she also knew all the adults through the theater program. And between the two, she was the top vote getter her first year that she ran for office. And she did not want to run for Senate because she thought Steve Kaiser was a nice man, but he couldn't take the Republicans anymore, and he's out. And so she made the decision that she is going to run for the Senate. I think we're going to get that seat. I especially think it because they're running MAGA folks. Yes, yes. So that means if we can hold all the others, we could get parity in the Senate just with her. We've got some other districts that are possibilities. 17 is a good possibility. And for those of you who know, that's the Gila monster-shaped district that was designed by Vince Leach so that he would get elected, and then he got kicked out in his primary. But that is the district that runs all the way from Saddlebrook and loops over and picks up parts of Vail. I mean, it's a crazy district. But that 17 is also a swing district. Maybe 16. We were really lucky with Keith Seaman. He's a great single-shot House candidate. I'm not sure we can pull off the Senate there, but we might be. It's going to really depend. Some of the things are out of our control, the national level. But some of the things are in our control. And let me tell you something about voting that I think is very exciting. If someone comes out for your school board, they will vote all the way up to the president. If someone comes out for the president, there's a good chance they're going to walk out the door after that vote. So if you can get people excited about the down ballot races, then you do Biden a favor, right? So if you can get them excited about your legislative race or your constable race or your sheriff's race, then they will help you with the presidential. And it also changes the whole dynamic because honestly, our school boards right now are the Civil War space of our country. If you have not been to a school board meeting lately, it is absolutely horrid. Almost as bad as our Board of Supervisors meetings. I mean, the poor school boards. I went to a Washington Elementary School Board meeting where Anthony Kern, some of you may know him, he's a very problematic senator, brought a bus with a huge screen, about the size of this whiteboard, slightly larger, that had pictures of the Democratic school board that they did not like on it, and then flashing the word satanic compared to it, right? Right there parked in front of the school board meeting. I mean, the level of low that has been going on and the lack of civility in politics is pretty disturbing right now. And it's really important to talk to our Republican friends and say, hey, does this party really represent you? Especially when you see behaviors like this, because behaviors like this are very, very scary. So we have been working a lot with our school board candidates. We've been working a lot with our county supervisors. All 64 county supervisors in the state of Arizona are up for election this year. They all go up for election with the president. So all of the county supervisors, we've been working over in Cochise. There are some wonderful candidates for supervisor. That board of supervisors is nutty. We need to get Teresa Walsh in. Teresa Walsh is going after David Crosby's seat. And she is amazing. If you haven't met her, she was military intelligence for 20 years. And then she was the Veterans Affairs person for Ann Kirkpatrick. She knows her stuff. And she will be a really lovely presence in that Board of Supervisors. Now that race is about 58% Republican. That is going to be a very hard seat to win. But she's got flags on every single piece of material. She's got her military uniform on her stuff with a, the sign that says that she is not representing the military and all of that. But the story that she has that I think is going to be most saleable in Sierra Vista is that she's adoptee. She is an adopted child from a military family who couldn't have children because of the constant moving and everything else, and she was adopted, and then she went into the military like her father who served in Vietnam. And that story rings very powerful for a lot of families in Sierra Vista who also had to deal with constant moves and changing health care and all the rest. And so I really think Teresa has a chance, but she's working really hard. And the good thing with her is we started early because we thought that he might get recalled. So that is part of the reason that she is so far ahead. So it's over a year out from her election. And she's already had her kickoff. She's already collecting resources. She's got a great website. So if you're interested in a supervisor race that could change things, that's one of them. That county recorder race over there is also critical. Ann Carl is running. She is a lawyer. She is a very bright woman. She will be so much better than Mr. Stevens. That would be another race to support. I know you're not that far from Cochise County here. And really, Cochise County has been embarrassment to the state. So anything we can do to shore them up a little bit. So that all of that is Arizona List. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I have an incredible team of young women and one token male who is James does our Northern Arizona candidates. But these are young women who really care about politics and really care about making and creating change. And honestly, we are a grassroots organization. We have no outside funding. We have no big donor out there. Emily's List is what we're modeled after, but they consider us a sister org. It means we do the same work, but they don't actually give us money. So, we're really on our own grassroots fundraising. The bulk of our members, it's $100 a year to be a member, or we'll do $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever you can do. But most of what we do is to help get progressive women elected to politics. Until June of last year, June 24th last year, you all know what happened. What happened? Yep, exactly. That's why we're all wearing these green scarves. We lost, yes, the basic fundamental right to abortion in the United States. We slid backwards. The rest of the world, and that's what this green wave thing is about, the rest of the world has been moving forward. Colombia has legalized, Argentina has legalized, Mexico has legalized, and then we go back. Yeah. And so part of what was really exciting is that we had people reaching out to us from Amnesty International, Mexico City office. They don't have an office in the United States. Mexico City office saying, how can we help with your human rights problem in Arizona? Let's do this. Let's figure this out. And so a group of organizations came together, and it was NARAL, it was ACLU, because this is a human rights issue. It was Planned Parenthood, Arizona List, Affirm. Some of you may not have heard of Affirm because they're mostly in Phoenix, but they are a Title X organization that works on birth control. And then later we were joined by Healthcare Rising to come together to get an initiative on the ballot. Now, we tried to do this right. Now, what does that mean? A year ago when Dobbs happened, some of you may have participated in the Arizona for Reproductive Freedom. That was a heroic effort after Dobbs happened, with 7 weeks before the election, to try to get all the signatures they could get. They didn't come through with the numbers that were needed because it was simply impossible to get the petitions out and to do it that fast. But they tried. We said, look at this movement and look at this energy, and we need to capitalize on that, but let's now look at it and test it. So we did polling with a group called Breakthrough. They have done polling for all of the other abortion initiatives in Michigan, in Ohio, in Kentucky, in Kansas. They did big polls in Arizona, and they came back and they said what Arizona voters will support by over 60% is a right to abortion in your constitution. We had really been hoping we could do a statutory. And the reason is, for an initiative in the state of Arizona, you have to collect 10% of the last gubernatorial elections voters for number of signatures. But for a constitutional amendment, you have to do 15%. So last year, 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, that election with Katie and Carrie Lake, That was a crazy election. We had a really big turnout. That means that the number of signatures that we need for this initiative is higher than it would have been if it was a boring Doug Ducey race. We need 393,000 signatures that are valid. And basically, because of validity and because the Arizona legislature hates initiatives so much, and they will toss off signatures at the drop of a hat, we are basically trying to collect double that so that we will be sure to qualify. Now, if you look at 700,000 voters, and you look at how many voters we have in the state of Arizona, which is around 4.5 million, and you do the math, that's what keeps me up at night. We're talking at roughly 1 out of every 7 voters in this state has to sign this petition. That's a lot. But we've got 7 months, which is a lot more than 7 weeks. And last time in 7 weeks, they collected 200,000 signatures. So we can probably do this with everybody's help. So that is why we are going from place to place. So I was on the phone over here talking to Mary Darling, who was on her way up to Yavapai.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I have the petitions in my car for Santa Cruz County, but I'm going to Yavapai. And I said, I'm changing it on this spreadsheet right now. Those petitions are going to Yavapai County. We'll take them to Santa Cruz. I'll take them to Santa Cruz later today. You go to Yavapai. Because we want to make sure that everywhere in the state, people have petitions and that they're getting them filled out. And so I told George, if there are those of you who would like to carry the petition, I will stay after this meeting and do a training with you so that you know how to do it. Because we are trying to train folks so they know what to do. But what we are trying to do is to build basically a huge movement of people who are concerned about this as a healthcare right. Now, I could talk to you, yes, that talked about your experience of your why, wasn't it? Was somebody on this, when we did the training, were you at the training the other day? No, okay. Someone, when we were at the training, we always ask people about their why. And why is it that you want to collect signatures for this initiative? And we had a woman who looked a lot like you, who was wearing a Women's March t-shirt. That's why I'm pointing at you. And she said that her why was because she had been in a situation as a nurse with a woman who needed an abortion, and the husband had refused, and the woman had died as a result of the refusal. Because at that point in time, the husband had to give permission. And we also had a provider at the first training I did when I asked why, and he said, because every day I have women crying in my office when I tell them no, and it's killing me. And the reality is that when we have all of these restrictive rules around abortion, we are asking people to sacrifice their health, their physical health, because somebody somewhere sitting in a legislature thinks that it's just fine to say X weeks. Oh yeah, 15 weeks. Nothing can happen after 15 weeks, except that we know that 20 weeks is usually when you do amniocentesis, right? 20 weeks is when you find out that you have genetic problems. So when we have a 15-week ban here in Arizona, folks, what that's saying is you do not have any options after 15 weeks, period. There are no exceptions. It means that they are actually, Banner is building a health clinic in Indio because they are busing people who have maternal complications to Indio. Can you imagine when you are in the process? Indio, California. No, not India. Indio, California. But the reality is that they don't want the legal issues. So I'm talking to a doctor at TMC who tells me they had a Navajo young woman in, 17 weeks pregnant. The baby had died. She was going into sepsis. And they were just sitting there with their lawyers trying to figure out what should they do, what should they do, what should they do. This is a situation that is not tenable. It's just not tenable. We have got to do something about it, and thank goodness we have the initiative option in our state. There are 27 states that don't have this option. So we are really lucky that we are in one of the 23 states. Does anyone know why we have the initiative option? Our Constitution was written after the progressive movement. So if you remember Woodrow Wilson, the cure for democracy is more democracy. Every constitution, state constitution written after 1901, put initiatives, referendum, and recall in their state constitutions because they knew that there may be a time where they needed to get past the legislature in some way or another. And so we are really lucky that we live in a state that gives us that right. The legislature hates it. And they have done everything in their power to make it as complicated as possible. And that is why we do a training to gather the signatures. It's not because you all don't know how to collect signatures. Most of you, probably your whole lives, have done something political to get signatures for some candidate. But because they will throw whole petitions out if something is done wrong, we want to try our hardest to make sure that they're done exactly right so that nobody throws them out. So that's a thumbnail sketch of what we're doing. I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. A lot to take in. But this Green Wave movement, the directors of the Green Wave movement came to our annual event in March, and they talked to us about how they managed to get women every month together in Argentina until they got abortion legalized. And every month people met, they talked to each other, they gave each other support, and then they moved forward. And so we said, okay, we're going to start just with the Day of Dobbs, June 24th. So the 24th of every month, we're encouraging people to wear their green scarves and talk to people about it. So this last 24th, August 24th, a friend of mine called me and she said, okay, I got brave. I put it on my purse. I went to work. And this woman asked me, and I was really nervous because I think she's Catholic. And then she said, I'm so glad you're doing this. And she's like, it is important. I said, yes, it is. It is important because when we start to talk to people, we're going to find out that a lot of people know that what's happening right now is a problem. And if you do believe that women should make decisions, and let me just say, I would love to use the language trust women. But we are using the language abortion, Arizona's for abortion access. And some folks have said, I don't like using that word. I think it's a little in your face. Independent men are suspicious. They don't like government. They don't like being told what to do. And they think you're trying to fool them. And stating what it is, out there plain, this is going to put abortion in the Constitution, actually pulls better with them than anything that sort of masks it and makes it sound like it's something that it's not. And we have more independents in this state than we do Democrats.
And Republicans.
And Republicans, yes, at this point. All right, I just answered a question for myself because I'm asking.
I have a very old question for
Sure.
you. When I was 17 and going to the University of Maryland and marching with a group of people looking for abortion rights for women, my biggest thing was, this is like a bank robbery where a man and a woman go in and they do this bank robbery together. But when it's done, they only charge the woman. It's not like we can do this by ourselves. So this seems to me like it's taking a right away from somebody who has been given the rights, and the Roe versus Wade, the hell with that. You know, we have the right to vote, and we should have the right to have our rights upheld. Do they say anything?
Well, it's a very interesting question. You know, I have a sign in my office which has Anita Hill standing on one side, and it says on the top, "What if?" and it has 9 women Supreme Court justices sitting there. And, because I do think, and obviously there's a range of women out there, as we can see with Amy Coney Barrett, but I do think that there are some questions where we are still in a situation. Arizona has more, we are in the top 10 of women to elected office in this country. And that is exciting. We have 35% of our legislature is female. Now, in our Democratic contingency in the Senate, 12 of the 14 Democratic senators are women. And that partially is because we have organizations like Arizona List that are really supporting our Democrats. What that also means, though, is that the entire Republican side, with an exception of wonderful Justine Watsock, for the most part, and I think there's one other, and Gail, don't forget Gail, are men, right? So we as Democrats are good about electing women. We can still do better. And also, the Republicans are not at the same level of parity as we are. And I just want to say, India just passed a law, if some of you listened to the news, that 1/3 of all elected officials in India must now be women. Can you imagine if we passed a law like that in the United States?
Yeah, one in the back.
Yeah.
If what we're going for is an amendment to the Constitution, do we know the wording of that amendment?
We do. We have it with us. We have the petitions with us, and we have the wording. And I actually am gonna. Do you have one?
Yes.
I'm gonna read it to you because I think it was very carefully worded, and we worked. This is where Planned Parenthood came in, because we wanted to make sure that providers were involved, and so we actually had a meeting with all of the providers of abortion services in the state to go over the language with them to make sure that they would be okay with it. So one of the things that polling showed us is that people do not want abortion without restrictions.
Without what?
Without restrictions, sorry. And they don't want abortion without restrictions because there's this idea that a woman is going to be 8.5 months pregnant and just decide, I don't want this baby at all. Never mind all that, right? We know that that is a fiction. But we also know that we have to win this. Once we get on the ballot, we have to win. So what it says is that every individual has a fundamental right to abortion, and the state shall not enact, adopt, or enforce any law, regulation, policy, or practice that does any of the following: denies, restricts, or interferes with that right before fetal viability unless justified by a compelling state interest; denies, restricts, or interferes with an abortion after fetal viability that in the good faith judgment of a treating health professional is necessary to protect the life or physical or mental health of the pregnant individual; penalizes any individual or entity for aiding or assisting a pregnant individual in exercising the individual's right to abortion; and then it defines what compelling interest is, and it defines what fetal viability is. And I will say what the fetal viability definition is. It means the point in pregnancy when, in the good faith judgment of a treating healthcare professional and based on the particular facts of the case, and that is why there's no weeks here, because every pregnancy is different, there is a significant likelihood of the fetus sustained survival outside the uterus without the application of extraordinary medical measures. So it's about as good as we can get in the state of Arizona. And all of the providers said they can work with this, because the only reason that you actually probably need an abortion after viability is because there is a physical health to the mother or a mental health issue for the mother. And this gives complete clearance to doctors to have, and healthcare professionals to have that right. Now, if any of you saw, there was I don't know if you read The Republic, but there was an amazing editorial in The Republic 3 days ago. And they took the wording of this initiative and they did an analysis. And they said, if this passes, this will actually overturn almost every single trap law that we have in this state. And what are trap laws? Trap laws are these bizarre laws that the legislature has been passing to infringe on abortion. So, okay, abortion is legal, but you have to come back 24 hours later to make sure you really want it. okay, abortion is legal, but only a health professional with hospital privileges in a hospital that is less than 10 miles from where you're doing the abortion can do it. Okay, abortion is legal, but it can only be done by a doctor, not a nurse, not a, so all of those would be resolved with this initiative. It's a very interesting editorial because it means there's a lot more at stake. And Kathy Herod, who some of you know, who is sort of leads up the opposition to all things that are anti-abortion, she said, oh, this is awful, give us money. Okay. As long as she's just using it as a fundraising tool, it's okay. There will be a point in time where they actually read it and get concerned, and we probably will have some serious organized opposition. But right now, it passed in Michigan, the no vote passed in Kansas, the no vote passed in Kentucky. Right now, we're looking at Ohio. That will be this November. Do you want to hear the best news I heard about Ohio? There's only one other thing on the ballot, and what is it? Legalizing marijuana. I'm like, okay, I feel better about Ohio now. Because that's going to get a segment of the population that wasn't really interested in voting in those polling places. And they are going to vote the right way on this issue. So, okay. So Ohio, and let me tell you, they are pouring money into trying to defeat Ohio. They need to have a win in order to feel like this is not a sweep. Florida has already collected now 800,000 signatures.
Wow.
They have the craziest laws ever. They don't have... Okay, first of all, you can print your petition at home in Florida and then just get your friends to sign it and just turn it in. No notary, no official. You just print it off your home printer and just turn it in. But you can't have it reviewed by the Legislative Council to see whether or not it's legal to be on the ballot until after you get half your signatures. So they got their 700,000 signatures, which was their cutoff point to be reviewed, and now it's being reviewed. They have to get 1.4 million signatures. But they've already gotten 700,000, and they just started in January, so that's pretty impressive.
Lady in the back.
I have a question about Ohio. Do they have how many months up to abortion?
They also have
none of them.
no.
Okay,
They just have viability.
Viability.
Yep.
Because Roe had viability too, right? And it was what, 27 to 28 weeks.
Well,
when?
Yeah, and then they moved it to 24 weeks, and then states started cutting back, and the Supreme Court started saying, well, you can move it to 24, you can move it to 22, you can move it to 15. And so that's why we were at a 15-week ban in Arizona. And I will give you one other piece of bad news. So we're at 15-week ban right now. No exceptions. No rape, no incest, no health of the mother, nothing. In December, that case is being challenged by some right-wing doctor, and it will go to the Arizona Supreme Court. Ducey, as you know, changed the number of people on the Arizona Supreme Court and then packed it. So there is a very good chance in December we will go to 0. We will go back to the 1864 ban. So we have 15 weeks right now, but we will go probably back to 0 in December. I wish I was less negative about that, but I think that's probably where we are. Yeah.
I have a question about, since you mentioned going back to 1864, about what went on in Wisconsin recently, where they were able to open up Madison and Milwaukee because the abortion could not be forced upon a person, so it had to be consensual. I'm getting that right.
Yeah. So Wisconsin was a special case, and I think it's because they were a state then, and we were a territory then. So there's a slightly different set of rules about it, but yes. And I think an argument could be made that a territorial ban shouldn't apply to a state. And I know that they're going to fight it, But I also know that the Arizona Supreme Court has ruled in a pretty conservative fashion the last couple of rulings, and so we may lose that fight.
University college students are really on this.
Yes, they are. So Planned Parenthood is one of the organizations that helps to support this, and they have campus chapters. So they are doing some circulating of petitions in their campus chapters. The challenge with college students is that some of them are registered in their home state.
Right.
So you really have to be clear with them where they're registered. Now the good news, for those of you that are circulating, is we did get clarity from our lawyers that you can register to vote and sign the same day. So if you're not registered, or you want to move your registration to Arizona and then sign, you can do that right there. You can fill out the form right there or go online, and then you can sign that same minute. You don't have to wait.
Even if you have a Colorado driver's license, my granddaughter ran into that in Georgia.
So to register to vote in Arizona, if you're filling out the paper form, you have to have an address.
Right.
So
College address.
right, your college address. So that is legally what you are supposed to be able to register with.
Okay.
Yeah. And you should have your student ID, and so then you should be fine. Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right.
We have one more.
I think this is a question maybe more for George. I'm just wondering how active the Democratic office is going to be on something like this, whether there'll be a person there every day when you're open with petitions, whether there'll be an advertising campaign.
There's
I'm just wondering, Green Valley has a disadvantage of so many people from out of state.
two things we're going to be doing. Number one, we're going to be training and retraining all our staff on voter registration. The laws have changed so much that we are concerned that we are not up to date. We are bringing in someone from the Pima County Recorder's Office to train our staff. The staff will be trained in how to present these petitions. Right now, till the end of the year, we are going to be open Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays like we're doing now, 10 to 2. And then next year, we will be trying to open it up every day from 10 to 2. So, and the petitions will be there. Our staff will get trained so they know how to answer some of your questions. They know that they can always call me. I'm 5 minutes away. I'll be glad to come up and answer any questions for them. That answer pretty much.
In addition, next spring we'll be doing a petition palooza again, where you can invite all your friends to come and sign.
Okay.
And let me say, if you are collecting petitions and you want to do a training with me after on how to collect petitions, I will stay for whoever would like to do that. All of the petitions for initiatives do have to be notarized. This is different than campaign and candidate initiatives.
Right.
So notaries is actually one of the biggest challenges. And
I am one.
You've got a notary there in the office, but that is also if you're up in Tucson, Arizona lists.
Right.
So notaries is actually one of the biggest challenges. And
I am one.
You've got a notary there in the office. But that is also if you're up in Tucson, Arizona list, we have asked our staff to become notaries, and you can drive by our office. We also are the petition hub. If you have a petition and you get it filled, we want it to come in right away. This is not an initiative that we're asking you to hold it to the end. Petitions are due in July. They're always due July 4th weekend. So they're due July 3rd. But we're asking people as soon as they get it completed to turn it in, because every signature is gold and we don't want you to lose it or go on vacation and then find it later and come back. And so we just want you, when you get it done, even if you get 14 and the page has 15 but you're tired, turn it in. We don't care. We would rather get those 14 than have you hold it and miss a deadline and not get it in.
I would just add one thing to that. I'm going to be signing them out to you. So you're responsible for the number that's on there. You need to bring it back so I can check it in, keep track of it. I will take it up to your office weekly, so you get them every week, and I will have them notarized. So when I bring it, okay. There were a couple other questions.
Just in going out to get signatures, if we're standing in front of a business, do we have to get their permission to stand there?
So it really depends on where you're standing. So technically, the libraries are public spaces, DMV, public space. individual business, it really depends on that business. Some people see the sidewalk as public. Other people feel very possessive about their sidewalk. Our recommendation is don't fight people. If a business comes out and says, I don't want you collecting signatures, just move. Some supermarkets, I mean, I used to love Bashas because Eddie was a good Democrat and he always let us stand in front of Bashas with no problem. But there are independent bookstores are usually a great place to stand. I will say libraries are a great place to be. Voters tend to read. The only issue is that they tend to go to the library the same day every week. So don't make it a plan to collect signatures Tuesday at 2 every week because you're going to run into the same voters after 3 weeks. Shake it up. Go on Friday. Go on Saturday because folks have patterns and you want to get into those different patterns. But the other thing I would say is be brave. Have folks over to your house. Have a little conversation when somebody says, I can't believe they're doing that. You can whip out your petition and say, you can solve it. But really, I think it's important that we all be a little brave right now and go out of our comfort zone. This is not easy. I was sort of mentally talking myself into getting this public with the initiative. Because I know that there are a lot of people who feel very emotionally about abortion. This is an emotional issue for some folks. And if you get into a conversation with somebody that is that emotional, we suggest you just say thank you and walk away. Do not try to argue somebody out of their opinion on this issue because it is too complicated. You know, it is something where we know from our polling, 70% of the folks out there support it. So just assume you found one of the 3 that didn't and move on. Because even independents and Republicans do support this initiative. Not in giant numbers, but they do support it.
I know the libraries here, you can go and stand on their sidewalk. You cannot block the door, so other than that, they're more than welcome to have you sign your petition right here down front.
Have you got an opinion on why it seems that we are no longer using the word choice?
Yeah.
What is that?
So there's 2 things. One is that the Republicans have used choice against us to make it sound like you want an abortion for breakfast. You know, you're going to choose your abortion. You know, like they've made it like it belittles the decision that a woman is making. And so for that reason, we are using more the words of rights. I also think that rights and freedom play better in Arizona than choice. And let me tell you, this is also something really interesting with men. While they can't use abortion services, they don't like the fact that it was taken away. Like, don't take my guns, don't take my abortion rights, even though I'm never going to use them and I can't use them, I still don't like the idea the government is telling me what I can do with my body, even if I can't do anything.
Back here.
I was wondering, there's been a push to register high school students to vote.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, if they're at least going to be 18 by the time of the
this
election.
is great. I have clarity from the lawyer on this one because we've had a lot of legal questions on this one. So, if you are 18 by the election day, you can register to vote. However, to sign a petition, you must be 18 on the day you can sign it. This is really weird because you can actually be 17 and be a circulator. Because a circulator just has to be 18 by the time you can vote. But you can't sign a petition when you're 17. Yes, this has been a back and forth. But just to be on the safe side, probably stick to 18-year-olds. Yeah.
I think we want to go back.
Yeah, because there's so much hostility, would it be better to have 2 people go together when they're trying to get signatures?
I always think that that's better. I also think, though, that, it depends on where you're going. If you're going in your neighborhood with your neighbors, you're probably going to be fine. If you're going to the Arizona State Fair, I would be with someone else. Right? So, I think it's really either, know your group, know your audience.
Okay. I'm going to ask all the ladies one question. there is a candidate opening for LD19 House of Representative. I'm asking you all to step forward and run for that office. Now, you've been asked once, you got 6 more times. So please, if you're not doing it yourself, find somebody. We need somebody to run for the House in LD19.
I want to do one very millennial thing here to do. I'm going to just do a selfie with all of you in the back, because this green wave movement, I'm going to meet the founders of this movement tomorrow, and I'm going to show them how many people are in this room with the handkerchiefs on, and they're going to be so excited.
Stand there. All right, take out your scarves and hold them up.
Or if you're wearing this, okay.
1, 2, 3.
All right,
Thank you all.
you.